My parents forced me to fund my sister's wedding while ignoring my debt. So I left. And what I did next destroyed their plans. I'm a 27-year-old guy, and for as long as I can remember, I've been the responsible one in my family, while my younger sister, Lily, was the golden child. It's weird how early that dynamic gets carved into your bones, how you start believing that handling everything alone is just your role in life. I grew up hearing things like, "You're the strong one," or "Lily's still a child, she needs more support." Meanwhile, I was barely older than her, but apparently old enough to carry the weight of the world. I remember being 14 and already helping my dad fix leaks under the sink, while Lily sat on the couch showing Mom her latest drawing. "Look how talented she is," Mom would gush, while I held a flashlight with numb fingers. By 17, I was covering small bills. The internet, groceries when things were tight, anything they forgot to budget for. I didn't complain. I told myself this was normal. Lily, on the other hand, floated through life like it owed her comfort. Every grade she barely scraped by was celebrated like a miracle. Every hobby she tried for 2 weeks became her passion that we all needed to encourage. I still remember her asking for money for art supplies while I had to negotiate with myself for weeks before buying new shoes. The guilt trips were constant. "Family helps family," Mom would say with a sigh, whenever I hesitated to take on another financial burden. "You know Lily can't handle stress the way you can." It always came down to that. Why I had to handle everything, and why Lily never had to lift a finger. The responsibility they praised me for was also the rope they used to tie me down. Even then, I didn't realize how deeply their expectations would cut into my future. Not until Lily's wedding came crashing into my life, like a storm I never saw coming. Lily announced her engagement the way celebrities drop pregnancy rumors, dramatically, with a practiced gasp, and her hand already held out like a spotlight. It happened during a family dinner, right after my mom set down the pot roast. "I have news," Lily said, beaming as she flashed the ring, and my parents erupted before I could even process what I was seeing. Mom squealed, Dad stood up to hug her, and the entire room felt like it instantly shifted into celebration mode. I sat there clapping politely, while something inside me quietly braced for the inevitable storm. Within minutes, literally minutes, my parents were already planning a wedding that sounded more like a royal coronation. "We should book the country club early," Mom said. "Lily deserves the best." Dad chimed in with venue ideas, flower arrangements, and catering options, as though he'd been preparing a mental Pinterest board for years. They didn't look at me once, not until money came up. "We'll need to figure out the financial side," Dad said, glancing at me with that tone that wasn't really a suggestion. Mom followed up with, "You'll help, right? You're the stable one." Just like that. No question, no conversation. Just the assumption that I'd foot the bill for a wedding I didn't even know was happening until 10 minutes ago. I cleared my throat and tried to be honest. "I'm still dealing with a lot of debt," I said. "Student loans, the car repairs, all of it. I don't have a lot of room right now." My voice felt tight, like I already knew their reaction wouldn't be good. And it wasn't. Mom waved a hand like I mentioned something trivial, like being in debt was a minor inconvenience. "You make good money," she said. "You'll figure it out. This is your sister's big day." Their excitement filled the room, but all I felt was a sinking weight, a growing pressure that whispered, this was only the beginning. The invoices started showing up the very next morning. No warning, no conversation, just a text from my mom with a screenshot of a venue. Deposit followed by, "Please send $1,100 today so we can lock it in." An hour later, my dad emailed me a catering estimate, like we were co-workers in some dysfunctional family business I never signed up for. Every ding of my phone made my stomach twist tighter. It felt less like wedding planning, and more like someone was sending me monthly bills for existing. I tried pushing back, gently at first. "I told you I can't afford this right now," I texted, hoping they'd remember the debt I was drowning in. But their response came instantly. "Lily deserves a beautiful wedding," Mom wrote. "Don't you want your sister to be happy?" That word, deserves, hit me like a slap. Apparently, my financial stability, mental health, and actual limitations didn't matter, as long as Lily got her fairy tale. Then, Lily herself jumped in. She called me one evening, her voice sharp and dramatic. "Why are you being so difficult?" she demanded. "You're literally ruining the most important time of my life." I tried explaining again. Rent, loans, bills. But she cut me off. "You're just jealous," she accused. "You hate seeing me happy." Hearing that from my own sister felt like a punch to the ribs. My parents kept layering on pressure, reminding me of every sacrifice they made when I was a kid. Rides to school, meals, clothes, things normal parents just do. They conveniently ignored the years I spent paying their overdue utility bills, covering groceries, repairing things around the house, while Lily lived carefree and adored. I felt cornered, trapped in this endless cycle of emotional manipulation. They didn't just want my help. They wanted my silence, my compliance, and my bank account. The final blow came when Dad said, "Just take out a small loan. It's not a big deal. You can pay it off later." That was the moment I realized they didn't see me as family anymore, just a wallet. I finally reached a breaking point and decided to be completely honest with them. One evening, I sat my parents down and laid everything out. My student loans that were still crushing me years later. The emergency dentist bill I'd put on a credit card. The car repairs I'd been pretending weren't that bad, just so I wouldn't worry anyone. Saying it all out loud made my chest tight, but I thought maybe, they'd finally understand I wasn't being dramatic. I was barely keeping myself afloat, but compassion wasn't even in the room. My mom leaned back with this disappointed sigh, the kind that made me feel 12 years old again. "Well, maybe if you managed your money better, you wouldn't be in this situation," she said. Dad chimed in. "Your irresponsibility isn't our problem. Lily's wedding is a once-in-a-lifetime event." Their words stung more than I expected. I wasn't irresponsible. I'd been responsible for everyone but myself for as long as I could remember. Then Lily, sitting there with her perfect nails and smug little grin, added, "Just work overtime. That's what you always do, right?" Like my exhaustion was some funny little quirk. Like my overworking was a bottomless resource she could tap into whenever she wanted a prettier bouquet or a fancier dessert table. The emotional manipulation hit even harder after that. "You're letting the family down," my mom insisted. "We've done everything for you," Dad added. "All we're asking is one thing. One thing. One thing that somehow involved thousands of dollars, my mental health, my time, and my future." As they spoke over me, dismissing every concern, invalidating everything I said, I felt something shift inside me. For the first time, I wasn't just hurt. I was angry. I finally saw the truth I'd been avoiding. This wasn't just favoritism. This wasn't just Lily being spoiled. This was exploitation, wrapped in family guilt, and sold to me as obligation. My rock bottom moment hit on a random Tuesday morning. One of those days where you wake up thinking things can't get worse, and life happily proves you wrong. I walked out to my car for work and saw a bright orange sticker slapped on the window. "Tau notice. Final warning." My heart sank. I'd been juggling payments for months, trying to keep up, but an unexpected insurance issue pushed everything behind. After a frantic call and a humiliating scramble, I had to empty what little savings I had left just to keep the car from being hauled away. My last safety net, gone in seconds. I sat in the driver's seat afterward, gripping the steering wheel while my hands shook. That was it. I had nothing left. Not money, not energy, not even hope. That night, I called my parents and told them plainly, voice trembling. "I can't contribute to the wedding. I literally don't have anything left." Their response was immediate and volcanic. My mom exploded, accusing me of being dramatic. Dad shouted that I was selfish, ungrateful, and sabotaging Lily's future out of spite. "Your sister deserves happiness," he kept repeating, like it was a script he memorized. Not once did they ask if I was okay. Not once did they show concern for the drowning feeling I'd been living with for months. An hour later, Lily sent me a message so venomous it made my chest tighten. A long paragraph telling me I was dead to her, that I was ruining everything, that I'd finally shown my true colors. She ended it with, "You were only good for one thing, helping. Guess you're worthless now." I stared at that message until the words blurred. I had never felt so alone, so used, so completely hollowed out by the people who were supposed to love me. And in that emptiness, a quiet truth finally surfaced. If I stayed in this family cycle, it would destroy me, financially, mentally, emotionally. Something had to break. I didn't sleep for 2 nights after Lily's message. I just lay there staring at the ceiling, replaying every conversation, every guilt trip, every moment where I bent until I snapped. By the third morning, something inside me felt dead. Not numb, done. I realized I'd spent years trying to earn love that was only ever conditional, and that hit me harder than any insult they'd thrown my way. I finally decided I needed to face them, not to fix anything, but to stop allowing them to crush me piece by piece. I drove to my parents' house with this strange calm in my chest, like the part of me that always tried to please them had finally burned out. The moment I walked inside, I knew something was off. Papers were spread across the dining table. Wedding invoices, vendor contracts, payment deadlines. They had everything laid out like a courtroom exhibit, and I was the defendant. My dad didn't even say hello. "We need $3,000 by Friday," he said, pointing at a highlighted line on a form. Mom added, "This is serious. You can't keep dragging your feet. Do the right thing." Lily was sitting at the table too, arms crossed, giving me a look like I was an inconvenience she wanted to erase. I took a deep breath. "I'm not paying," I said, my voice steady for the first time in weeks. They froze. Then the shouting started. Mom accusing me of betrayal. Dad calling me a disappointment. Lily laughing under her breath, whispering, "You're pathetic." Every word felt like a final confirmation. There was no love here, only expectations. Instead of arguing, I just shook my head. "I'm done," I said quietly. "I can't do this anymore." Their voices followed me out the door, but for once, I didn't turn back. When I sat in my car, the silence felt like the first breath of freedom I'd had in years. Leaving their house that day felt like stepping out of a burning building, smoke still in my lungs, but air finally reaching me. I spent the next week packing the essentials, ignoring every call, every text, every voicemail, dripping with guilt and anger. My boss had recently mentioned a temporary assignment in another city, something I'd brushed off because it felt too sudden. But now, sudden felt like salvation. I accepted it without hesitation and left town with 2 suitcases and the quietest sense of desperation I'd ever known. The first night in the new place, a tiny studio with creaky floors and peeling paint. I sat on the mattress and just breathed. No accusations, no invoices, no guilt, just space. It wasn't glamorous, but it was mine. I started rebuilding from the ground up, created a new budget, cut unnecessary expenses, set realistic goals for paying down my debt. For the first time, the money I earned stayed with me instead of disappearing into someone else's dreams. The distance made everything clearer. Without their voices constantly in my ear, I realized how much of my life had been molded around their expectations. My phone kept lighting up with their attempts to pull me back. Dad's angry rants, Mom's manipulative, "We raised you better." Lily's dramatic pleas followed by insults. But I didn't respond. I let the messages pile up like reminders of why I'd left. Then a cousin called me unexpectedly. "Dude, things at home are a mess," he whispered. "The wedding plans are falling apart now that you're not paying." I didn't know how to feel. Relief? Guilt? Vindication? Instead, there was just a heavy stillness. The house of cards had started collapsing the moment I stepped away. But I stayed quiet. I stayed gone. I stayed focused. Because for the first time, I wasn't just surviving their demands. I was finally learning who I was without them. And somewhere deep down, I knew this was only the beginning of the fallout. A few weeks into my new job assignment, I finally started to feel a fragile sense of peace forming. Like my life wasn't hanging by a thread anymore. I was eating better, sleeping more, and actually hearing my own thoughts again. Then one night, my cousin Mark called me out of the blue. His voice sounded uneasy, like he wasn't sure if he should even be talking to me. "Listen," he said. "I think you need to know something about the wedding money." My stomach tightened. "What about it?" He hesitated. "Your parents, they weren't broke, not even close. They had a savings fund for Lily's wedding. A big one. They just didn't want to use it." For a moment, I didn't understand. "What do you mean? They said they were depending on me." Mark exhaled sharply. "That fund?" Lily drained a chunk of it. Designer bags, spa packages, a $900 bridal photo shoot practice session. My heart dropped. He continued. "They didn't want her to face the consequences, so they figured you'd just cover it, because you always do." His words hit like ice water. I felt my pulse pounding, heat rising through my face. All those nights I stayed awake wondering how I would afford bills, how I would stretch every dollar, how I'd failed them as a son. Meanwhile, Lily was blowing through wedding savings like a bored heiress. And my parents knew. They knew. I leaned back against the wall, vision blurring slightly. "So, they lied," I said, my voice barely above a whisper. "Yeah," Mark replied quietly. "They lied to everyone. They just thought you wouldn't push back." The betrayal felt deeper than anything before. Not just the money, but the manipulation, the entitlement, the certainty that I would silently break myself to fix their mess. I wasn't just a scapegoat. I had been a plan. And for the first time, I felt something sharper than hurt. Clarity. And under that, something colder. Resolve. After Mark's call, I didn't sleep. Not because I was anxious, but because something finally clicked into place. Every guilt trip, every accusation, every demand. They weren't emotional outbursts. They were tactics. My family had been using me like a backup generator, something they could switch on whenever they ran out of power. Now that I knew the truth, I wasn't going to let them drain me again. Not emotionally, not financially, not ever. I spent the next day gathering everything. Every text, every voicemail, every screenshot of invoices they'd sent as obligations. I saved the messages that said I was dead to them if I didn't pay. I organized them into folders, dates, and timestamps lined up like a timeline of exploitation. Looking at it all laid out made my chest ache, but it also fueled me. This wasn't a family misunderstanding. This was a pattern. I didn't confront them, not yet. Instead, I spoke quietly to the cousins and relatives who had always been more level-headed. I didn't embellish anything. I didn't rant. I simply shared the screenshots, the receipts, the truth about the wedding fund Lily blew through like pocket change. And just like that, the cracks in my parents' narrative began spreading wider than they expected. Slowly, word started circulating. I could tell by the sudden shift in my parents' messages, confusing mixtures of fake concern and veiled threats. "We're worried about you," Mom wrote. 5 minutes later, Dad texted, "Stop spreading lies." They were unraveling, and they knew it. Meanwhile, Lily tried to salvage her falling empire with panicked texts about vendors canceling. "Fix this," she wrote. "You're making everything worse." But I didn't respond. Her desperation wasn't my responsibility anymore. Every move I made was quiet, deliberate, controlled. For the first time in my life, I wasn't reacting to their chaos. I was letting the truth do the work, and the silence on my end was becoming more powerful than anything I could have said. The fallout hit faster than I expected. One evening, my phone lit up with a call from my aunt, the one who never gets involved in family drama unless something is seriously wrong. Her voice was tight. "What is going on over there?" she asked. "Your parents are telling everyone you abandoned the family, but the screenshots, those tell a different story." I could hear the disappointment in her tone. Disappointment aimed at them, not me. And that alone told me the tide had officially turned. Within days, the extended family chat was on fire. My parents had spent years cultivating this image of hard-working martyrs who sacrificed everything for their children. But once the receipts surfaced, their story didn't hold. My uncle called them out for lying about being broke. A cousin asked why they expected me to pay for things they already had money for. Someone else pointed out Lily's luxury splurges. Every message chipped away at their carefully built facade. Then came the disaster of the week. Lily's fiancé found out. Apparently, someone showed him the evidence. Maybe a cousin, maybe he saw the tension himself. But he confronted Lily during a family dinner. My cousin described it to me afterward. Lily sobbing, my parents shouting over each other, the fiancé demanding to know why they lied, and why he wasn't told the truth about the budget disappearing. At one point, Lily screamed, "My brother was supposed to fix it," as if I were a scheduled repairman who didn't show up. My parents tried to pivot, painting me as unstable, ungrateful, vindictive. But every excuse contradicted the messages they'd sent me, the ones everyone had seen by now. Their credibility evaporated like smoke. That's when my phone started exploding with calls. Dad, then Mom, then Lily. Voicemails of panic, of begging, of manipulation blended with desperation. "You need to fix this," Dad said. "This isn't just about you." "We're being humiliated," Mom cried. "Come clean and make this right." But I didn't answer. I just stared at the screen, realizing something monumental. For the first time ever, their world was falling apart, and I wasn't the one holding it up. A week later, I got a text from my dad that simply said, "Come home. We need to talk." No apologies, no ownership, just another command masked as concern. I almost ignored it. Almost. But something inside me wanted to face them one last time. Not to argue, not to beg, but to make it clear, I wasn't theirs to use anymore. When I walked into the house, the tension was thick enough to choke on. Mom was pacing in the living room, Dad sitting stiffly at the table, and Lily sulking in the corner like a child being denied dessert. No one greeted me. Dad just gestured to the table and slid over a thick folder, printouts of screenshots I'd shared with the family, circled in red like they were evidence in a trial. "You blindsided us," he said. "You made us look like monsters." I didn't flinch. "I didn't make you anything. I just showed people what you said." Mom's voice cracked. "You've ruined everything. The wedding's off. The family's humiliated." She tried to cry, but the tears didn't match her fury. "Why would you do this to your own sister?" Lily finally snapped, slamming her phone down. "You had one job, and you couldn't even do that. You're pathetic." I stood up calmly and looked them each in the eye. "I'm not your ATM. I'm not your scapegoat. I'm done apologizing for putting myself first." Dad's face went red. "So that's it? You're just walking away from your family?" "No," I said, voice low. "I'm walking away from the people who never saw me as family, only as a tool." No one said anything as I turned and headed for the door. Their silence was louder than any scream, and for the first time, it didn't hurt. It felt like freedom.